The following program is suitable for general audience of any age. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed without any censorship and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Hello and welcome to another episode of TPS, the Public Square on Other Derana News Channel, where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the political landscape of Sri Lanka. And today we are diving into a topic which you and I have been constantly thinking about, and that is the challenges of Sri Lanka's economic recovery. Now, given that the national budget of 2026 is been impending, and also that we have come across certain segments and situations where we feel like that we are finally regaining ground after the 2022 collapse. But also then again, the families across the country have a different sentiment about this current situation. It is if the crisis may have faced or rather faded from the headlines, but when it comes to the household, it hasn't been faded. So to discuss about this topic, I have two guests over here. And towards my right, I have Dr.Kavinda Jayawardena, Member of the Parliament, representing Samagi Janabalawegaya. Welcome to you to the program. And also towards my left, I have Ms. Lakmali Hemachandra, Member of the Parliament, representing the National People's Power. Welcome you as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So now, digging into the first question, I want to ask from Dr. Jayawardena. Now, when it comes to the current context, are we genuinely emerging from the crisis? Or is it rather we have put it into a stabilized situation in terms of the paper, theoretically, or rather in the practical version, are we really emerging from the crisis?
First and foremost, thank you very much for inviting me for the program. I think what's important is the livelihood of people. You can clearly see how difficult it is with the cost of living and taxation, what people are facing. So now when you see the inflation rate, last month, previous month, it has been gradually increasing. So not only general inflation, it's food and essentials. So I think we are still in the crisis, but of course, yes, right now we have electricity, we have fuel, so on and so forth, but yet I don't think that the people of this country are facing, or rather feeling, that they are out of the crisis, because still the goods are expensive. You can see what has happened when it comes to pharmaceuticals, when it comes to education, when it comes to health. So people are struggling. So I think we are still in the crisis, but managing the situation.
All right. So that was a different perspective in terms of how the current situation is. But now when it comes to being a part of the government, how do you feel like it is when you got into the power and to the current context? Do you feel like y'all are treading over the current situation in a right direction, or are y'all still in a stagnated position when it comes to getting Sri Lanka out of the collapse?
Thank you, Prashansa, for having me at Public Square. Yes, and I think when we got into the government, the main challenge for the government was to stabilize the economy. Stabilize the economy in the sense, because we are a party that has never been in power, and because there were so many misconceptions about our mode of governance and the way that we were going to tackle the economy, we had to sort of win over certain sections of the society to our vision and the way that we wanted to govern. It was very critical for us, and I think during the past year we managed to do that. We managed to make sure that people are not misunderstanding where the government is coming from. that we are not here to, sort of put people under pressure and, rush through certain reforms. That is not where we come from. Where we come from a place of trying to ease ourselves out of the crisis and get into the path of development, right? So this year the focus is on how do we want to achieve that development. Because last year it was more, when we came into the government, there were high taxes. People were coming out of it. There's still a high rate of poverty. Last year it was around 25%. So poverty was very high, and people were suffering. Like Kavinda also said, that people were suffering. So the main focus was to make sure that people received support from the government in terms of transfers, subsidies. We managed to give farmers, fisheries sector, and people, sort of left behind out of the economy, sort of through the Aswasuma payments. We increased the Aswasuma payments, increased payments to the elderly, increased payments to the disabled, and so on. So the main focus was about easing people out of the crisis. This year we are moving towards the direction of development. And the government has a strategy for development, which mainly focuses on attracting FDIs into energy, transportation, and logistics, along with the digital economy. So that is going to be the strategy going forward. And so that along with supporting people, we do think that we need to take care of our people, the communities, the farmers, the workers, women, and households. That's important. But we also need to move into direction of rapid development, and that is crucial for Sri Lanka to come out of the crisis.
All right, so I'll take it from there now, Dr. Kavinda. So Ms. Lakmali was mentioning point by point as to what the NPP government has done since their inception. Now, in that situation, do you think that from where we were to what we are now after they got into the government is standing along with whatever they promised, or whatever the situation that in terms of the economic recovery Sri Lanka is going through?
I would rather focus on other Derana news. So if you watch the news, you can see the paddy farmers on the street protesting. They're protesting that they haven't got fertilizer. You see the farmers who are after their crop, like onion farmers, potato farmers, they haven't got a right price. So that's one aspect. And another aspect is the fishermen's. Very recently, they went and protested against the current government's new law that they're trying to bring, not allowing fishermen to use winch for their fishing purposes. So, that's one of the things. And plus, we last Saturday had the second reading of health budget. What we saw was there's loads of drugs, example around 300 drugs, which are essential. We have 862 essential drugs. Out of that, almost 300 drugs are not readily available. And doctors are on I would rather say a strike. They are not prescribing medicine to be purchased outside the outside pharmacies. So what we see is there's a huge trend where doctors leaving the country. Skill migration is happening. So this has been happening for some time, but right now there's a new government. So doctors expect new reforms. So which is not quite happening. And their debt allowance from 30,000, the previous government has increased it up to 70,000, but when you really calculate, they are supposed to get around 260,000. So from sector wise, everyone is affected. All these people have contributed to bring this country to this level. So we have to be sensitive for their requests. So I think what this government should do is listen to the day-to-day workers' requests and cater to that. So I think it is essential because livelihood is quite difficult.
Exactly. Now, I believe in that context, you were referring as to the substantial importance of the day-to-day lifestyle of a citizen. Now, with regards to the national budget that has been presented for the year 2026, do you feel like these challenges for the economic recovery has been very well understood and adapted in terms of maybe reform certain ways and mechanisms to make sure that they work around with it in 2026?
I think what has happened is that the same IMF agreement has been moved forward by this government in 2025, and what we see even for 2026, which is actually difficult for the people, and you don't see a safety net for the people. So of course that affect the people, and there is very little which we could say progressively have changed, but otherwise it's just the same old IMF agreement has been followed.
All right. So that is something that Dr. Jayawardena has in terms of how the NPP government has proposed in terms of the national budget for 2026, in terms of today's topic, which is about economic challenges and the recovery. Let's dig deep into the next segment as to the different sections in taxation, the livelihood and whatnot. Before that, let's go in for a short commercial break. This is The Public Square. Welcome back to TPS. We were discussing about the recovery in terms of the economic challenges and how the Sri Lanka is getting and moving forward. So, Ms. Lakmali, now when it comes to the tax, I believe tax situation is very crucial in terms of our daily livelihoods as well. Do you feel like the tax is being borne by the same formal sectors, or do you feel like there should be a proper balance? Because in the current situation, what people perceive is that there is no balance in terms of paying the tax.
Which people?
So formal sectors,
Which
they
people
mention.
say that? Which people? Because there is an assumption, I mean, this is, when you say that livelihood is different, that people believe taxation is high,
Yeah.
compared to what? Compared to which time? Compared to what policies? Right? So when you ask me that what new taxes were imposed this year? No new taxes were imposed this year. Actually, we reduced taxes. We reduced the pay tax. We reduced VAT on certain items, right? Digital services tax was supposed to be imposed at 30% this year. We reduced it to 15%, and even that tax was not operated within the year. There was an imputed rental income tax to be implemented at 30% this year. We did not go ahead with that tax, and we are not going ahead with that tax for the next year as well. So this idea that tax has increased is actually a myth. No new tax has actually come into operation this year, right? The only tax that has come into operation is the duty on vehicles and VAT, which were actually imposed in the previous year. Those are not taxes that we imposed, right? So tax burden, there's a structural issue of tax burden where indirect taxation is high and direct taxation is very low in Sri Lanka, which is something the president also addressed in his budget speech, right? But that doesn't mean you can, in one budget, or even two budgets, you cannot drastically change that structure. We have to make sure that more people who can pay taxes are paying, which is something that we have been doing the last year, which is why you see IRD, Customs and Excise Department making a good revenue, right? We are well on track with the revenue targets. And we believe we should be well on track with the revenue targets next year also, without imposing new taxes again. Even this budget does not impose new taxes, right? So this idea that taxation is very high it's a structural issue which we have to get out of through growth, through expansion of the economy, and making sure that tax base is widened, and more importantly that there is more tax compliance. So this is something that we are trying to do. And again, when you say livelihood is difficult, compared to when? Compared to which time, right? Compared to 2000 when? Like, because this is, if you look at the cost of living, it is lower than last year. It is lower than last year. right? So there is inflation because disinflation is not entirely good for the economy right now. Inflation doesn't necessarily mean good or bad all the time, right? It depends on the context. And we believe that we have to get out of disinflation, which would shrink the economy. We want to expand the economy. So there has to be a certain level of inflation, right? So the target of the central bank was actually 5%. The current inflation is much lower than that. It is somewhere around 2%, right? So this idea that it is really difficult for people. Yes, it is difficult for people because we are a third world country. We are in a developing country, right? We do not have a lot of development in the country, and we are sharing misery instead of development. So it is difficult, true enough, but it is not something that has developed over the last year. It is not something that has even developed over the last few years, right? This is a long-term structural issue in our economy, which we have to get out of. This is why the government is focusing on debt sustainability for one thing, because we do not want to go to a place of bankruptcy. Large part of poverty and misery that people are facing right now is due to bankruptcy, because we lost a large chunk of our economy when we hit bankruptcy, right? So we have to come out of that and make sure that we are never going into that position. And the next thing is growth. We need growth. And for that, we need foreign direct investments. So if you look at the budget that we have presented a strategy of integrating the digital economy, transportation, and energy to make sure that there's an integrated plan, and we are depending on that plan. That is our plan going forward, to attract foreign direct investment into the country. And there are challenges, there are certain issues that we also face, but we have to look at it in terms of long-term development and long-term targets. All of the issues that Kavinda is saying about farmers, about workers, I think for workers it has not been a bad year. We have increased the minimum wages for all sectors, state sector, estate sector, and private sector. Right? I don't think in history of Sri Lanka for the past 40 years we have seen a government which did all this within 1 year. We have done it within 1 year, and we will continue to do that. So we have to share development, and for that there has to be development, and the government is going to be very strategic about that plan.
All right. So I take the statement that most of the citizens, the common public, might have a very different purview when it comes to the taxation as well.
How would you say most people?
No, I'm commenting on what you said. So it is a myth that they, if they consider it to be. So I want to ask about your opinion in terms of what Ms. Lakmali presented as well.
So when President was abroad, he also said that this budget that he is not going to introduce any new tax. I think our taxation threshold is to the maximum for the direct taxpayers, but what you see is that when it comes to local level, you see municipal councils, urban councils, they have increased their taxes, right? So in Sinhala you call Varipana, all that is increased. A person who have paid 100 rupees now paying 4,000 rupees, So the taxes are coming in so many different ways. That's number one. Number two, when this government came to power, one of the main things what the government promised to our people is that they will remove VAT for education and health. Now, what's the end results? Now, you take National Hospital, the main hospitals, most of the laboratory equipments, laboratory testings, even machines like X-ray machines, CT scans, MRIs, linear accelerators, some of them are not functioning. One of the main reasons is, lack of spare parts, maintenance, and one of the other reasons is it's expensive, right? So if the government was keen enough to remove the VAT, how they have promised to the people of this country prior to the elections, this would have been a much easier situation where the equipment would be much cheaper. They could bring advanced equipments to the country, because with the time new technology has evolved. So the taxation comes in different forms, different ways. So I agree, there's indirect and direct taxation, where the indirect taxpayers are more. So now they have increased the where it was 6 million for a business, they have reduced it up to 3 million, right? So hypothetically, if someone is doing a revenue of 100,000, right? So most of them who are doing middle level business would be eligible to pay this new tax. So tax is coming in different ways, right? So it's just a matter of making it easier for the people to pay tax while saving for themselves and living an ordinary, decent life. This is what we should create in this country. Yes, people should pay tax, that's fine, right? That happens around the world. But there should be a window for people to save for their future, plus live a decent life. Now what people feel, at least the people that we talk to, they feel that you're completely being sucked out, everything that what you have earned. So that is difficult for people. That's what we hear. So I think it's important for the government to figure out how they could manage the finances and give some sort of relief for the people, so that they could have a very decent life, plus, as I said, save some for their future.
All right, before I get into Ms. Lakmali's opinion as to what Dr. Jayawardena presented, let's go in for a short commercial break. This is The Public Square. Welcome back to TPS. We were discussing in terms of how the different perspectives hold upon to the economic recovery and the challenges and the current situation in terms of the Sri Lankan political landscape. So, Ms. Lakmali, I believe you do have a comment on what Dr. Jayawardena presented as well, and also being hopeful in terms of the current government, and also having fingers crossed in terms of the 2026 national budget, with all that has been come up with education, health, certain very significant reforms as well. So what do you have to tell to the viewers who are watching in terms of getting Sri Lanka back into a much more stronger recovered position?
Yeah, thank you for having me at Public Square. And just to respond to Kavinda, I think it's not fair to say that we have not given any relief. We have increased Mahapola, we have increased farmer subsidiaries, we have increased fisheries subsidiaries, we have increased every subsidiary that you can name actually, right? And we have also given workers, fishermen, farmers, everybody production subsidiaries. So I think it's not fair to say that the government is just thinking of taxation. Again, we have not imposed new taxes. And about VAT that he was talking about, yes, we have brought it down to 36%, 36 million income, but then VAT is something that is already added to the retail price, right? So then people are already paying that. It's just a matter of collecting it from people who have not paid it up to this point. And there has not been any price reduction in terms of not paying those taxes either. So that is where the thinking is at. It's not a new tax to say. It's a tax already collected into the system that we are going to collect. And to make a final comment, I think, as I said, we have to be very strategic about how we go forward. We have shared every relief that we can get, we can give. We are very mindful of how the bankruptcy affected people, how the crisis affected people. And we want to ease them out of that crisis, and development is the way to get out of that, right? Growth is the way to get out of that, which is why we are targeting a midterm growth of 7% and making sure that public investment is increased as we go along. Right now we're at 4.5%, but we do want to increase it. And what Kavinda was talking about taxes on health sector, this is a goal that the government has. We did try to remove those taxes, but that didn't work out in the previous 2 years. But this is a goal that we have, and I believe in the near future we will be able to achieve that as well.
All right. So I think, as I said, fingers crossed and hopeful in terms of what we can go ahead with. So let me get into Dr. Jayawardena. What is your final comment in terms of today's thematic situation where we discuss about how we have challenges in terms of the economic recovery and how the current government is proceeding, and also how the oppositions need to support and need to go ahead in the way along. So any final remarks for all our viewers?
Yeah, I think what's important is that we as the main opposition party, SJB, we have realized the need of a strong opposition, and my lead Honorable Sajid Premadasa and our team has been very vocal in Parliament, and we've been raising concerns regarding this budget. And one of the main concerns that we had was about health sector, education, and so I think we are trying to put pressure on the government to let the government drive in the right path. You know, that's the role of opposition. So we have been doing that. Plus, what we see is here that the government is very much satisfied with having a revenue through taxation. But now, when you look at like Aswasuma sort of programs, the approach that the government has towards these kind of projects is like, you know, some of the statements made by, I don't want to name the ministers, but it is not so suitable, you know. So people who are eligible for programs like Aswasuma are merely not beggars, you know. You are, for some reason you need some sort of a support from the government. And it happens even in Europe, even that happens in UK, US. So, you know, you give that kind of support to the people who are in need. So it's the duty of the government. And I think as the opposition, we are trying to keep the government intact because we want the government to go in the right track. It's important. And we are trying to do our best.
Thank you so much for that final comment, and also thank you so much, Dr. Kavinda Jayawardena. Thank you so much for joining today's program. It was a pleasure having you here.
Likewise.
So getting back to, I believe, one final statement, rather something that we can have our fingers crossed for 2026, because is there one thing that your government is looking forward to in terms of a drastic change that the people can look up to in line with the economic recovery?
I think digital transformation is the main agenda for the government. But just to respond to what Kavinda was saying about Aswasuma, I think you have to judge Aswasuma by the allocations that we have made to Aswasuma. We have this budget as well as the last budget has the highest expenditure head for social transfers, right? So it's not fair to say that the government has some plan against these Aswasuma programs and so on. We don't have a program like that. And what the minister's comment is specifically referring to people who are receiving Aswasuma and trying to tell them that you should not be dependent on these social transfers, but you should also be independent and stand up on your own. He is no way saying that you should not receive it or that, you know, the government policy is not to give it. So you have to understand it in terms of where he's coming from and contextually. Which is being largely misrepresented in certain forums, I believe.
Yes, so since you were mentioning about this Aswasuma as well, now it is something that the people look up to is welfare when it comes to the daily livelihood and the situation that currently we are facing and all. So we went through a huge economic crisis and we are still sustaining. And given that you all had a challengeful situation in 2024 to come up and then have a whole new setup and go ahead with it. So with this all new situations that you all are facing in your purview as well, you also have a responsibility in terms of doing something greater than what which has been done by the other governments, previous governments. So in that context now, the current budget, if I may just ask about, in terms of health, there were a lot of suggestions and ideas that were coming up, and also education where new facilities were researched, and also when it comes to the Mahapola increase and all. So these situations definitely take up us to a final conclusion as we can look up to something.
Yeah.
So that is something positive that the people are holding as well.
Yeah.
But there might be also certain narratives and
course,
opinions of the people where, okay, this might not be enough, because always in the society there's two sides of definitions.
True.
Now,
And I think
in
in a
that
democracy,
context,
yeah.
yes, in that context, how are you catering in terms of the NPP government when it comes to balancing of your responsibilities, the ideologies, and also moving forward for the economic recovery through all these challenges?
I think we are being very pragmatic. We are being very realistic, very pragmatic, and we have been very pragmatic and realistic even during our election campaign. So when people say that we were going to get out of IMF and so on, we never said that. There were certain sections in the political spectrum who said that. We never said that. We were always going to go with the IMF program and conclude it. That was our plan. And that was not our choice. The IMF program and how it came to us was not our choice. But we do understand that we have to be pragmatic about these situations, because people will have to eventually pay for any mistake the government does. So like you said, right, we are balancing out a lot of things. We are balancing out people's expectations, the need for development, certain reforms that we need for development, the challenges that comes with having an opposition who's very aggressive about certain things. But that's okay. That's democracy. We are okay with that. And we have always loved that space also. And to this date, we have not used repressive sorts of, this. Yes, there are protests and so on, but we have not tear gas protests. We have been very engaging with the protesters, very democratic about everything that we do. So we are very confident that the government can go forward practically. That is the approach that we have. Yeah.
Right. I believe being pragmatic and going ahead in a practical situation is what a third world country, or more like, not telling that Sri Lanka is a third world country, we always have room for development. Yeah, a developing country. So something that when it comes to, since you all have gone through 1 year of leadership as well, and looking back as we are coming to the end of 2025 as well, as a reflection now, you all had the certain challenges in terms of getting ahead with IMF, then the tariff came up as well. So those are new additions to the political landscape of Sri Lanka, because tariff condition, it has been new for the people also to understand and adapt, I believe. So in that context now, it has got into the system of politics, and now something that you all have to definitely address or go through in 2026 is as well that. So how is it coming up?
But then again, Prashansa, that the tariff situation, this fragmentation of trade in world, it's the tariff, of course, the Trump's tariffs are new, but this tendency and the development is not new. So this was something that we could always predict, and we were anticipating. Then I think even when everybody was very agitated about the tariffs, the government was keeping a cool head and being calm about it, because you have to, this is the way forward, right? We cannot predict how international trade is going to be with the recent geopolitical changes and developments. So this won't be the last challenge also in terms of trade, international trade, right? So we have to be very careful, and we have to develop our own sustainability and resilience to these changes that happens globally. Unfortunately, what happens is, because our economy is very weak, because we are reliant on international institutions and bilateral relations so much for our development, which is normal, but then because the shocks can come very hard for Sri Lanka, and we have to develop an economy that can withstand those shocks and can sort of maneuver through these changes steadily and reach the level of development that can actually make us independent, this is something that the president keeps on saying, that we have lost our economic sovereignty, right? Which is true, because you have to always respond to these shocks
and rely on someone,
and rely on there are certain restraints that we have. So that's what I said, we are being very realistic and pragmatic about all of this. And so that is why we are very focused on high growth also, right? And it is a challenge for a country like us, which has never had that kind of development, but needs that kind of development. If you have to grow out of this, you have to grow out of it at a very high speed and rapidly. Like you can't have 3%, 4% development and then expect to get out of the sort of the stagnation that we are in. We need to move forward, and we have to move forward in leaps, right? And this is why we are also focusing on the digital economy and the digital transformation of our economy. a lot has been said about digitalization and digital transformation, but we have done very little about it. And we are flagging digital economy as one area that we want to attract investments, because we need to have the technological upgrade of the entire economy. It's not just about having a few, centers or a few government offices that have digital services. This is about uplifting the productivity of the entire economy through digital transformation. And while we retain our traditional economic aspects of tourism, agriculture, service sector and so on, we have to move forward with the world. We have to make sure that we are catching up, but we also have to make sure that we are not moving too fast, that we are uprooted. Yeah. So that is the challenge we have, and I think we are very conscious about that, and we are confident that we will be able to achieve considerable change, especially next year.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lakmali, for joining us at the Public Square. I believe these opinions, these perspectives will hold a better stance and also an opinion in terms of the people, and feel relieved and in terms of whatever the notion that they are having in their mind. Yeah, so today we are having a great conversation in terms of how we can sustain and go through the recovery process of Sri Lanka in terms of economy, policies and whatsoever. So in terms of how we are bringing forth the Sri Lankan notion, developing country, in terms of everything that is being brought out by the government, and also for the 2026 year, we are rather hopeful for everything that is coming up. So don't forget to send your feedback to feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or WhatsApp at 076 8057 7933. We will see you again with another episode where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the political landscape of Sri Lanka. Till then, take care, be safe and have a good night.